that brings me to a weird question I want to ask you, bro. And just answer however you want to answer. Do you think today, as of right this second, right now, U.S., so America as a whole, do you think the United States school system as a whole is still segregated?
Black schools versus white schools. What's the difference? We're going to discuss the environments, the kids, as well as the teachers, and the difference between black schools and white schools.
What's your podcast talking about?
Black everything. Black everything. Black everything.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for showing up. This is Black Everything with your host, Greg. It's my brother Wendell. And we back again with another subject for you. The subject today is black schools, or predominantly black schools versus predominantly white schools. And this is close to myself and my brother because we have been in both systems. We have been in predominantly white schools. We've also been in predominantly black schools. But not only that, we have currently have children that are in predominantly black schools, which is obviously why we're invested in this particular subject. So, why do the subject black schools and all that? That's because of one reason: funding. Predominantly black schools are incredibly underfunded. Just to throw a fact out there for you, if the data shows that school districts attended predominantly by students of color receive $23 billion less in funding than primarily white districts. So now obviously they're going to have a bunch of reasons for that. But I want to get that fact out there first. And then we're going to start this off by my own personal experiences with this. Do you want me to pause, bro, so you can?
No, I'm listening to you.
It just don't look good on camera though, bro. You know what I mean? But okay, never mind. Anyways, so the reason this is something that I personally witnessed is an issue. When I went to an all predominantly white school, the curriculum was challenging. The teachers were held you accountable. If you needed additional attention, you got it. Whether it be after school programs, tutoring, or even if the teacher got to put you to the side in the back of the room to go over some sort of lesson or some sort of teachings that he or she wants you to teach, they will give that time. And that seems to be a very dominant trait in predominantly white schools. Whereas when I went to a predominantly black school, I actually ended up graduating from one. Man, I rarely was challenged. Rarely did I feel challenged. And worse, I rarely felt like anybody cared. You know what I mean? Like the teachers didn't seem to care. The principals didn't seem to care. It was more like a boot camp. You know, it was just a bunch of adults trying to keep some kids in line. And that's how they treated it, like a detention center. You know what I mean? And it didn't feel at all like a school. You know what I mean? It felt like a job. Whereas when I was in the predominantly white schools, not so much. You know what I mean? But I believe another thing, I'm gonna pass it over to my brother and let him say his experiences in both versions of the schools. But I think another issue, and the reason why the teachers and the principals don't care in predominantly black schools is pretty easy. They say here black teachers were paid only a fraction of the salary of their white counterparts. What kind of teachers you think gonna be in predominantly black schools? Black teachers. So if you gonna pay me pennies on the dollar to deal with these little badass kids, yeah, I'm gonna give you half attention too. So I ain't gonna lie, I understand where they're coming from. But what's your experiences with both?
Well, I can go further back. When we moved in to the location where I'm at now, that school was predominantly, matter of fact, all the schools in the area was predominantly white. Mm-hmm. And you did get the more attention from the teachers. Of course, that time was different too than now, the way they do school. But you got the attention, you got the necessary skills that you needed. The teachers paid attention and tried to help you no matter what. Now, as I got up in grade, it started to change. Like, especially around the later part of the grade school, when you get into, we had a middle school and a high school. So when you first get to the middle school, that's when it started to change. Yeah. You had multiple schools coming there. You had some teachers that gave a damn. I never saw any on my behalf per se.
Now, is this when it turned to predominantly black?
Yeah, it was predominantly black then. By then, the area had started to shift.
Right.
Out here.
So in other words, to elaborate on what he's saying, he moved out to an area that was predominantly white in like the 80s, something like that. Mm-hmm. And over time, within that decade, it turned to predominantly black.
Yeah.
Which in turn made the schools become turn from predominantly white to predominantly black. So do you think that that funding will just cure it all though? Do you think if the predominantly black schools just receive more funding, that's the cure all right there?
Let's see, you say more funding. Some of them, the funding is true, but you gotta, after being an adult, and especially with this generation now, the teachers actually don't get enough payment, especially not in the predominantly black areas, to deal with unnecessary BS.
Yeah.
And they just trying to come in, teach, do their thing, and hopefully make a better person for the world to come. But funding is always a plus, because the funding also, I believe, don't quote me, also goes towards the teacher's pay too, their contract. And then you get, with the funding, you have more activities, even after school activities for the kids, instead of them hitting the blocks, running the streets.
I think that's a key point into why predominantly black children in school are less focused and less invested in the school, because there is no after school programs, there is no additional help there. But again, when you low on funding, this is what you get.
Some of the schools, the schools that I went to, my kids go to. So I knew the school that it had, when I first moved there, they had everything everybody else had. Because see, that was an option.
Right. Well, the statistics show that districts with mostly non-poor students, so non-poor, which obviously they well off students, have more money to spend than districts that have poor students.
Yeah.
So if you evaporate all the funding and money from a whole area, and then you didn't like remove any people, it was still the same amount of people. It's just less resources and less money in that community.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you bleed an area dry, you're gonna get homelessness and high crime.
But also, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Or some of that also has to, the funding is levels to that funding too, because the funding also comes through whatever county or district you're in.
Right.
So if they're messing up on their end, it's going to deplete that on other things. And if they're not showing interest or trying to get new items, businesses, or things of enjoyment to bring money in, it also hurts the funding of the district also, not just the property taxes that's in the building.
Well, you just hit on a key point. One of the reasons that low income areas and poor areas don't offer more taxes to make better schools and make better areas is because of what you just said. There ain't no businesses. Like, look up and down the street. Vacant houses everywhere. Vacant businesses that people just said, fuck it, I'm done. And just left.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And whereas you go to predominantly white school or predominantly white areas, and it's a business area of the block.
Oh, business, big businesses.
Yeah.
And which means their school is 3 times as big and got buses that can reach further out, which means they can get more money.
Right.
From those businesses.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings me to a weird question I want to ask you, bro. And just answer however you want to answer. Do you think today, as of right this second, right now, U.S., so America as a whole, do you think the United States school system as a whole is still segregated? Let's not forget it also, if you're watching this video, you got plenty of reasons to come back. So come back. Go ahead and subscribe. Right down here.
Hey, what's your podcast talking about?
Black everything. Black everything. Black everything.